Remember that time when I said I weren't going to start any new armies this year?
Pickle jar, miniatures, excellent!
A while ago, Army Painter kindly sent me out the Speed Paint 2.0 mega set, and they've been sat waiting for a project that would suit them down to the ground. So when the brand new Seraphon box from Games Workshop turned up, I was more than excited to get started and to try out these new paints and to start yet another Age of Sigmar army. Now, I was quite a big fan of the original Speed Paint set when that released. I liked how it applied and flowed from the brush, I liked how it dried. One of the only real complaints that I had was the colour limitation. There wasn't many colours available in that original set, but it looks like Army Painter have fixed that and added a whole host of new colours to this set, and I can't wait to try them all out. For this project, I'm going to be painting in two halves. I'm going to paint the mounts and I'm going to spray them with a white burn because the colours that I'm putting on over the top are going to be warmer colours. And then for the riders themselves, the lizards, I'm going to prime them in white because I want to use colder colours like blues and greens on those, just so we've got a nice bit of contrast. So from the choices I've got available, I'm using Nuclear Sunrise, Poppy Red, Ancient Yellow and Noble Skin on the mounts. And then for the riders themselves, I'm going to be using Raging Sea, Ochre Clay, and then I'm going to try out a couple of the metallics as well. I'm going to use Talos Bronze and Hopite Gold. In my original speed paint video, I just opted to use a brush and skip the airbrush completely, but for the sake of this video, because I like using an airbrush, let's give it a go. Now, the plan for this unit is to have the rider and the mount in contrasting colours. So the mounts are going to be in a sort of really vibrant orangey yellow colour, and the riders are going to be in a nice cold blue, so they will contrast really nicely against each other. I'm applying the red from an underspray to start off with, because this is going to act as my shadow. It's going to add depth, it's going to add muscle definition on the legs and things like that, and it's actually a really nice colour. Once the red was down, I added some orange to the airbrush and started applying that on the next layer up. One of the key things to remember when you're using thin paints like contrast paints or speed paints or inks or anything like that is to exercise good trigger control on your airbrush, because you don't want to just blast it out, because it'll go really glossy, it'll just go goopy, it'll fill in the gaps and stuff, and it'll not give you that nice transition feeling. That being said, I did go a little bit heavy with the paint in some places. Because of the nature of speed paint and how it's designed to work, this actually worked quite well and it went into some of the recesses a little bit more. I wouldn't really recommend it as something to do on purpose in particular, but it was a happy mistake that I sort of noticed and thought, that actually worked quite well. As soon as I started adding the yellow, I was absolutely blown away. Adding it to the white that was left on top and into the orange as well, it just boosted the vibrancy up of the entire model like 1,000,000%. This yellow is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm definitely going to be using this in the future on some other projects. Now that I've had a go with the airbrush and tested them out and seen how they work, I think it's about time that we moved on to using the brush, because that's what most people are going to be using when they're using these paints. So that's what I want to test out next. Now, even though I absolutely love using them, I didn't just want to get stuck testing out the bright and vibrant colours. So I used one of the darker speed paints to paint the chicken claw feet, the claws on his forearms, just to add a bit of variety. And what I'm doing with this is applying it quite thickly at first, and then I'm going in with just some water on my brush and pulling the speed paint down. So what will happen is that sort of orangey red undercoat from the overspray of the airbrush will start showing through a little bit more, and then it'll get darker as the speed paint is pulled down towards the bottom of the feet. So it'll hopefully give a bit of a nice blend from the reddy orange down to the black. I have to give a bit of a thanks to Games Workshop here as well, because ever since these new Seraphon models got announced, I've been really excited and planning a Seraphon army to go along with all the rest of my Age of Sigmar armies, and I have to say that painting them was an absolute blast. I had a hell of a lot of fun. To add a little bit of definition back to the model and to take advantage of those lovely details, I decided to add a little bit of a dry brush on there. I'm using ice yellow because it's a nice pale colour which will help stand out against the rest of the vibrant model, and I'm literally just giving it a very light dusting just to catch the edges, the sort of ruffles on the feathers in the chest, the muscle definition on the arms and the legs and on the claws. Doing this just adds that definition back in that sometimes you can lose when you're doing airbrush blending. It becomes more about the color transitions and things like that, whereas doing this just adds that definition in again and helps to sort of make those blends less obvious. We're almost ready to try out the speed paint metallics, and these are what I've been excited to try for a long time. The idea of having a speed paint that's also a metallic, I was very eager to see how these performed. So I decided to go with the bronze because gold is sometimes a bit too gaudy for my tastes, and I started to apply them, and I wasn't particularly sold on how they were performing. I tried them on a couple of bits, and it wasn't until I read the bottle that I saw that these are supposed to be applied over a white or a grey primer, not over a red airbrushed colour. I decided to get the rest of the details painted in before I added the metallics, just so I could work out if I did want to go with bronze or if I did want to try the gold. The gold looked quite nice when I tried it in the palette, but bronze is probably what I would normally go with. With everything else painted and added on, I decided to go with both. I decided to use the bronze and the gold, but first I needed to apply a white base coat to all of the metallic areas so that I could use the metallics to their full potential. For this, I'm just using titanium white from Pro Acryl because it is an absolutely amazing white paint and everyone should own a bottle of this. Promise you, you will not regret it. With all the white down and dry, I started to apply the metallic paint. Now the gold goes on really nice, it flows really nice, and it does kind of work here on this model, but I decided to give it a proper test, and oh my god, was I amazed. When I was watching the footage back while I was editing this video, I decided to leave this painting of the shield in as one shot so you can see the paint going on, the application, and how it works. It absolutely blows my mind that it actually works, but yes, metallic speed paint is a thing. It's not for everything. It works better on some things than it does on others, so it works better on this shield than it did on the little bits of banding on the dragon. It worked really well on the top of this staff, so you've just got to pick your subject carefully. That's probably something to bear in mind whenever you're using anything like speed paint or contrast paint or anything like that, is that it's going to work better on some models and on some parts of models than it is on other stuff. Some things are just highly detailed and just take speed paint really well. Stuff like these Seraphon models with all the scales and the details on them, they're kind of perfect for this style of painting. Whereas stuff with a lot of flat panels or smooth panels, maybe not so much. I started off this year by saying I wasn't going to start any new army projects this year, and since then I have started 2 new Age of Sigmar armies. I've got massive plans for Warhammer 40k with 10th edition on the horizon. I've started playing Warcry and I've got multiple warbands for that. I've started playing Underworlds and I've got loads of stuff to paint for that. I've got multiple projects for other systems like Star Wars Legion and various other things that I can't even talk about yet. And it's paint like this and styles and techniques like this that make it possible for me to actually get anything done. I am fully aware that I am not a display competition painter. I am a aggressively average painter for tabletop, and it will stand out and it will look cool, and I am a-okay with that. Just because we're finished painting the models does not mean that we are finished with the models. We've still got the bases to do, and I'm going to walk you through how I did them. To start with, I'm adding some fast drying basing glue from Geek Gaming Scenics and then just spreading that round so it's a nice even covering across the base. I'm then taking one of my favourite base readies, Patchy Plains, and just dipping the models in it. Once that's done, I do something extra on top of this, which you don't have to do, but it does make the bases a lot tougher, and that's just to add a couple of drops of matte scenic sealant. You can do this while the glue is still wet, just leave it overnight to dry, and these will be absolutely rock solid by the time they're done. Now you could just leave it there, but I decided to add a couple of wildflower tufts onto the base just to add a bit of variety and a bit more of a sort of nature look, with these being Seraphon models, using a few different colours. And then once all those were on, it was time to tidy up the base rim. I've started airbrushing the base rim because I like the sort of black overspray that it adds around it to sort of silhouette the model. And with that, everything was finished. Would I recommend Speed Paint 2.0? Absolutely yes. It is an improvement on what I already liked. It's added loads more colours, and it's meant that I have more options for when I am painting miniatures in my hobby. And that is what it's all about, giving gamers and painters more options and more variety so they can make different choices based on what works for them. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. If you have, leave a like down below. I'll catch you in the next one, and until then, enjoy your hobby.